A wholesome tongue, a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit. A fool despises his father's instruction, but he who receives correction is prudent. My name's Arthur, and I thank you for joining me as we share together these two Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 15, verses 4 and 5. A wholesome tongue, a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit. The scriptures have a lot to say about the tongue, particularly in the wisdom literature. The book of Proverbs, the Psalms have a lot because people are attacked by the tongue, cursed by the tongue, and they are blessed with your tongue. And James talks about it. He says, how can a spring bring forth beautiful fresh water and salty bitter water? It doesn't happen. So why does your mouth sometimes bring forth sweet words and sometimes bring forth foul words? It's not right. So a tongue is a small member of the body, but it is great in its effects. Therefore Jesus had a lot to say about what people said compared with what they do. And I've read the second verse, a fool despises his father's instruction, but he who receives correction is prudent, because Jesus also links these two things when he addresses this subject in Mark chapter 7. Instruction and correction are delivered by words, the words of God. The Pharisees and some scribes came together to Jesus, having come from Jerusalem. They were on the warpath, as it were, searching him out. And when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is, with unwashed hands, they found fault. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash their hands in a special way, holding to the tradition of the elders. The issue here is not that the hands are clean, but that there is a particular routine that is followed in washing the hands. And if that routine is not followed, then the hands are considered unclean, regardless of how clean they actually are. When they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash, and there are many other things which they have received and hold, like the washing of cups and pitchers and copper vessels and couches. Then the Pharisees and scribes asked him, why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands? Their religion was focused on the ceremonial side of their action. So Jesus responded, well did Isaiah prophesy of you, hypocrites, as it is written, this people honours me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. What had happened here was that they worked out a way of justifying themselves by having a ritual that they emphasized, a ritual that was easy to perform, but if they did it regularly, then they could say that they were godly, regardless of the fact that God had not said it, so it had nothing to do with godliness whatsoever. But they taught people that if you did this thing, then God would bless you. So Jesus says, laying aside the commandment of God, you hold the tradition of men. The washing of pitchers and cups and many other such things you do. Of course, Jesus is not advocating that we don't wash pitchers and cups and don't wash our hands and don't wash our face. But what he's saying is that these things do not justify you before God. The disciples, when they ate bread with unwashed hands, it wasn't that their hands were dirty, it was simply that they hadn't performed the ceremony, at least on this occasion. Because Jesus' teaching was not focused on the ceremony. Jesus' teaching was focused on what's in the heart. So Jesus continues, all too well you reject the commandment of God, that you keep your tradition. He's accusing them of going one step further. Not only are they neglecting the commandment of God, but they are rejecting the commandment of God. He gives an example. Moses said, "Honour your father and your mother," And he who curses father or mother, let him be put to death. But you say, if a man says to his father or mother, whatever profit you might have received from me is korban, that is, a gift to God, then you no longer let him do anything for his father or his mother, making the word of God of no effect through your tradition, which you have handed down. And many such things you do. So not only are they neglecting the word of God by emphasizing their traditions, but they have developed traditions that directly oppose what God has said. And the one that concerns Jesus at the moment is the fact that people circumvent the commandment, honour your father and mother. Paul in Ephesians 6 points out, this in fact is the only commandment that has a particular blessing attached to it. So in rejecting the commandment, they are rejecting God's blessing on the family, and through the family on the society. Our society is doing exactly the same thing, undermining authority of parents, so that society has gone awry for many people. Jesus explained his teaching to the crowd. There's a crowd always around him, and he's been addressing the Pharisees with straight speaking. He didn't just ignore them, they were attacking him, and he was defending himself by pointing out the flaws in their argument. When he had called all the multitude to himself, he said to them, hear me, everyone, and understand. There is nothing that enters a man from outside which can defile him, but the things which come out of him, those are the things that defile a man. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. Now, of course, you can eat something that will make you sick, and at a biological level, you can be defiled by lots of things. But these things are material things, they are not spiritual things. And when Jesus looks at a person, he sees whether a person is defiled in their spirit. A spirit is defiled by what you see and what you hear, whether there is criticism or blessing. So the Pharisees and the society at large focus on the external things rather than focusing on the spiritual things. Our society is willing enough to accept all kinds of regulations that keep us healthy, that stop us injuring ourselves physically, but many resist firmly any regulation which would limit what they see and what they hear. They want to indulge in things that defile the spirit of a man. For our hearts are evil. When he had entered the house, away from the crowd, his disciples asked him concerning the parable. So he said to them, are you also without understanding? Do you not perceive that whatever enters a man from outside cannot defile him? Because it does not enter his heart, but his stomach, and is eliminated. It passes through, purifying all foods. That is, foods do not defile the spirit. So what you eat is not the critical thing. And he said, what comes out of a man, that defiles a man. For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile a man. Jesus has addressed three different groups. He was attacked by the Pharisees. He responds to them with a logical argument. He summarizes his teaching to the multitude with a saying and explains it to his disciples. The things that defile a person are the things that come from our own heart. And the gospel is about transforming our thoughts away from the materialistic approach of this world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. To go back to our proverb, for a wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit.